Uh, Tonight, we're going to have Dan Mergens present on the dual system of control. So it'll be a fresh look at it from a different referee's perspective. And following Dan's presentation, we'll have Dennis Wickham go over the rules differences between IFAB and high school. So a lot of you obviously have been doing youth competitive club and tournaments with the laws of the game, and there are some differences with the high school rules of the game. And in order to successfully officiate high school game and to be consistent through the season, you'll need to make sure that you're only enforcing the high school rules and not IFAB. Looks like we've got everyone who's going to participate at the start of the meeting. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan so we can talk about the dual system of control and how we can get through our games consistently and smoothly. Okay, Dan, take it away.
All right, thanks, Chip. So we're going to be talking about the dual officiating system. So most of you, I assume, are familiar with the three-man system, the dual, what we call the diagonal system of control. In the two-man system, you're going to have a situation where both referees are going to be on the field. They're each going to have a whistle, and they're going to be responsible for both calling fouls and offside. What we're going to do in that system is we're going to alternate between those two positions. So we're going to have a lead referee. The lead referee is the one that's following play going downfield. And we have a trail referee that's following behind play. With that, the lead referee's primary responsibility is going to be offside, like you would have in a three-man system with an assistant referee, your lead assistant referee. And the trail referee is primarily going to be responsible for calling the fouls. That doesn't mean that the lead referee should not be calling fouls. What that means is that the primary responsibility of the lead referee is for making those offside calls. Just like in the three-man system, you want to make sure that you utilize the best angle for calling fouls. So position yourself so you can see between the players so you can anticipate the foul, just like you would in a three-man system. And you want to make sure that you consider who has a better view, right? If the lead referee has a better view of the foul, he sees that there's a clear foul being made, he should be the one calling it. If the trail referee sees the foul and has a good view, he should be the one responsible for making it. Consider what your partner can see, consider what you can see, and if you should defer to your partner for a call. In the situation where you may think that your partner may have made an error in judgment, we want to make sure that we make a presented front, a united front as a team to both the players and the coaches. So if you do believe your partner did make a mistake, it's best to go talk to them, make sure you understand where they're coming from. And if you have an alternative outcome, that's when you want to ask them, did you consider this? And if they would like to change their call, they can do so, but you never want to overrule them or force them to change a call. With that in mind, if it's a matter of whether or not the rules are being applied correctly, you want to make sure that the rule gets applied properly. So if it's a matter of a restart, when you can make a substitution, that sort of thing, which is a high school rule, you want to make sure that you make the right decision as a team. That situation, you want to let your partner know what the rule correction would be. And as a team, you let them, you present that united front. So you would go to them, let them know what the change would be, what the correction of the rule is, and then they would be the one to make the correction. As always, just like in the three-man system, the teamwork is your key to survival. You sink or swim as a team if you're making decisions on your own without the input from your assistants. It's just as problematic as it would be in a dual system, trying to make all the calls without the input from your fellow referee. So in ours down here in Southern California, when we go on the field, we don't have what is typically referred to in the rule book as a head referee. We are both equals. There's no one referee that's above another. So when we step on the field together in the dual system, we're working together as teammates, not one trying to tell the other one what to do and making them follow their lead. The big challenges in the dual system of refereeing is positioning and fitness. Right? Those are two biggest hurdles we have to overcome. One is because the positioning on the field requires us to both monitor offside in either direction on a quick counter. And you have long balls that get sent over the top. You have to anticipate those the play that could happen, and you have to position yourself appropriately for those things. With the fitness, we have a lot of quick plays going on. You'll find in many of the games that we do, we have a lot of varsity games down in South Bay, which are dual systems, and these are boys varsity matches. So these are the fastest players you're going to encounter on just about any field. And you have two referees who are trying to cover the entire field in that regard. So fitness is a real big key to making sure that you're successful in those matches, as well as that, anticipation of the play and having a proper positioning. Some things we want to do to make it easier on ourselves is utilize the field you have. Most of the fields, if not all of the fields, we're going to be on this year as high school referees is going to be on football fields. And on those fields, we have nice lines for offside for us. So if you are out of position, you can't be exactly, even with the lead attacker. We'll talk more about why we're going to be with the lead attacker, not the second to last defender. If you're not in the correct position, utilize the field to help you make those determinations. We have hash marks and big lines every 5 yards. So utilize those lines to help make the correct offside decision. Basics for your positioning. The trail referee, the one who's behind play, is going to trail the play by 20 to 25 yards. Normally in a diagonal system of control, right? In a 3-man system, we'd be looking at closer like 10 to 15 yards behind play. In the dual system, we don't have the luxury of being able to trail play so close because we're going to have to get back into an offside position judgment as the lead referee on a moment's notice. Always make sure you leave room for the players on the field. So the players need to be able to, pass the ball, move the ball around. So we're going to leave the center of the field for the main passing lane for those players. And we're going to do our best to stay out of that area, as well as any potential passing lanes that those players might open up. So you want to be key to watch out for where the players are going to open up the field, where they're going to play relief, and make sure that they can do that without danger of you stopping play by knocking the ball down. And the key here as a trail referee is you got to be ready on a moment's notice for that counterattack. That can happen at any time. Depending upon the level of play, the pressure on the ball, depending upon the skill of the players, you could see these counterattacks come when you least expect it. So we want to be ready for that. For the lead referee, our basic positioning is going to be staying even with the lead attacker or the ball, whichever is closer to the goal, rather than the lead, the second to last defender. So if you recall, as an assistant referee, you want to make sure that you're even with the second to last defender of the ball, whichever is closer. That way you can make an offside decision from there. So as a lead referee in a dual system, instead you're going to go with the lead attacker. This is going to allow you to cover more of the field and be able to react again to changing position from going from your primary role as a lead referee for judging the offside position to trailing play and your primary role there being to recognize the fouls. As a lead referee, you're going to want to make sure that people don't sneak in behind you. Players can do this. Since you're going to be on the field and not on the line, you're going to want to make sure that you keep an eye on the player's positioning. So if you have an attacker coming in from behind, that you can adjust so that you can keep all the play in front of you. So who blows the whistle? Typically, you're going to have the trail referee responsible for blowing the whistle, but there are going to be other instances where that's not the case. So on your kickoffs, corner kick, penalty kicks, if you have a ceremonial restart for a free kick, if you have a drop ball and you need to blow the whistle, such as you stop the play for injury, you would have the trail referee be the one responsible for doing that, for blowing the whistle. Otherwise, the lead referee, if you have an offside decision, typically they're going to be the ones to blow the whistle. And then when you have a situation where you have a substitution or a restart after a substitution, the referee who's closer to that is going to be the one responsible for that. We're going to show you some diagrams now, just kind of walk you through different situations and how we want to position. So again, the core positioning for the referees on the field, we want to avoid this big red zone in the middle, the keep out zone, and let the players play around that and be passing through that lane. The trail referee is going to be from the play, so the ball's over here, the trail referee is going to be behind the play and to the left. So you want to keep that ball on the play to your right, since you're going to mostly be keeping yourself to the left side of the field as you follow play. The lead referee is going to be even with that lead attacker, and that's where the lead referee wants to be. Cut in as close as you can. So if the lead attacker moves, you're going to cut in tighter, but that's your general positioning is with that lead attacker. On kickoff, similar to the three-man system. So the referee, trail referee, is going to blow the whistle to start the play. They want to be outside play. As the kickoff moves, the trail referee, is going to adjust their positioning to keep that play again to their right and in front of them. For trail movement, we have, again, the trail is primarily responsible for calling fouls. And you want to make sure that you're avoiding that keep out zone if at all possible, right? So we're going to stay behind active play and be ready to sprint for those long passes that come over the top. Continue to adjust. And then as much as you can, keeping your lead referee in view. For the lead movement, so again, this is primarily your job is offside decisions. And you want to make sure that the attackers don't sneak in from behind, all right? So here we're focused on the lead referee. And as play comes in, we want to make sure we're staying with that lead attacker. And when a shot is taken on goal, we want to make sure that we can make a goal line decision. What comes across. You're likely not going to be able to get all the way down to the goal line as a lead referee, and you're going to have to come to terms with that if you are very particular about it. I know I like, as an assistant referee, I like to be on the goal line, win the shot when the ball reaches there, but we cannot do that and survive in the two-man system. So we're going to have to get a good enough angle for those goal line decisions. For the corner kick, we're going to have the typical setup, except we're going to be slightly modified. So the trail referee, the lead referee is going to come in slightly off the on the goal line, but away from the kick, and give the kicker an opportunity to put the ball in unobstructed. So you want to make sure you're not on the line. This is a wide diagram, right? So, but you're going to be off the backside of the goal line to give them the opportunity to put the ball inside, but then immediately come inside once that corner kick comes in. Again, the trail referee is responsible for the whistle. We start play. As the ball comes in, then the lead referee is going to assume that position for making the offside goal decision. In this case, the lead referee is going to take the standard positioning of the ball or the second to last defender, whichever is closer, until the play transitions out. And then we'll assume the normal positions for the dual referee. In the counterattack, the lead and trail are going to be swapping responsibilities. The lead referee is typically going to have to sprint out in order to make this happen. So this from the follow-up, for example, from our corner kick, say the keeper collects the ball here. That ball can move out quickly. So we want to make sure that the lead referee is quickly sprinting back into position, so that once that ball comes into play, that they will be in a position where they can get even with that lead attacker coming back out of the backfield. If necessary, this is where the lead referee, basically we call it turn, tail, and run. Right? So we're going to get out of there as fast as we can and count on our trail referee to recognize any fouls that might occur behind us as we exit. For the penalty kick situation, the trail referee, again, is similar to the three-man system, is going to be responsible for encroachment. The lead referee is going to be responsible for the goal, no goal decision. As in the three-man system, my recommendation for you is that you decide up front what you're going to do about the keeper encroachment. Typically, if it's obvious enough for the trail referee to see the keeper encroachment, so taking both feet off of the line before the ball is kicked, and obviously interfering with that ability to score the goal. If it's obvious enough for them to make that determination, then that is probably when you should make that determination. It's something you can agree upon as a team if you want the lead referee to, tightly watch it. But that is one that it's very difficult to call and make right unless you're trained well in the lag effect, which is being able to notice when the ball was touched and then correlate that to when the keeper moved. So recommendation is trail takes that responsibility. So in this situation, the trail referee is going to make sure the penalty area is cleared outside the penalty arc, etc., like you normally do. You're going to check for encroachment on the touch. And the lead referee is there to make the goal or no goal decision. And again, here we want to be ready for that counter, because as soon as if the keeper collects the ball here in a penalty kick situation, you can be switching quickly back to a counterattack. Some references, the presentation is available on the Google Share Drive. If you're interested in getting fit before the season, which I highly recommend, there's a lot of references available for you. NYSOA had a really good segment for a physical training initiative where you can have multiple interval type training sessions to get you fit. And the soccer rule book is available online as an ebook you can download from Amazon. I highly recommend that because it's searchable. So in addition to picking up your rule book from Chip, you can also get it online and have it on your phone as a reference. And if you need any questions on this, or you have suggestions or improvements for the slide deck, please send it to me. My email's there.
Okay, thank you, Dan. I don't know what the questions were in the chat. Here's one. So keeper saves the kick, but didn't have 1 foot on or above the line. What's your recommendation on the best practice on how to handle that as a team?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, Brian. And first, you want to make sure that you're not suffering from the lag, right? And that there's a very well-known phenomena which occurs for both making offside decisions, as well as making this decision here, which is when the keeper steps off the line, right? So the idea is that it takes you a while to process when the ball was touched, right, by a teammate, an offside decision, in this case, when the ball was kicked by the kicker, right? And then the decision of when the keeper moves off the line, right? So you're trying to correlate that. So sometimes it takes there's a little bit of lag in your brain to process that. So you really want to make sure that it's 100% right. So if you do have that situation where you're 100% sure, you really want to make sure that you've talked about that in advance in your pregame about who is going to make the call. My recommendation is that the trail referee makes the decision. That if it's obvious enough for the trail referee to see that happen, then the decision should be made. If the lead, then the problem is because the lead referee can be a little anxious about it and make an incorrect decision. And we don't want to make an incorrect decision.
Okay, there was a question about whistles for starting play, and I just want to be clear that a whistle is not required on a corner kick to start play. Whistles are required for the kickoff, a penalty kick, to restart on a substitution, or after issuing a card, or on an injury. If you're giving distance for a wall or dealing with distance on a throw-in, then you would also restart with the whistle. Hopefully that answers that question. It's important to, as we're officiating, our purpose is to make sure the game's fair and to punish cheaters. So if the goalie is cheating, don't let the goalie get away with cheating. Make them retake the kick if it's saved. So I think as long as you have an overall perspective, especially in high school, maybe not so much for IFAB anymore, but for high school, they really want you to prevent people from cheating. And so that's how you should look at the game in general. Okay, there was another question that popped up while I was talking.
So it was just a follow-up on you've got a penalty kick, you got a keeper who appears to have infringed. The person who is on the line has information, the person who's the referee, what's the communication going between the two, I think is Brian's follow-up question.
Right. My recommendation would be that the trail referee be the one responsible for making the decision. It's a little more obvious from their position whether or not, as Chip said, the keeper was cheating or not. Right. And that's really what you're doing. Right. You're making sure that you don't have a hope solo situation where the keeper is taking 1 step, 2 step, off the line and then making a big save. Right.
And Dan, this is Dennis. If I can add one more thing, look at each other. Look at each other. You're going to get a look that says, did he or did she? And kind of a nod yet.
Like, oh
Blow the
yeah.
whistle. Everything's good. You look at each other and one's going, don't blow the whistle. Because as Dan said, you want to be sure, but look at each other. You're not that far away.
Yeah.
There are a couple of related questions about finding the recorded sessions of this. One was somebody wanted to see the changes from last year or even 2019. Well, we did that in first session, I believe. So that should be recorded.
So a lot of the training sessions from prior years and the first training session is available on the website, SCSOASD.com. There really is a great deal of information on the website. It's very user-friendly, and it's worthwhile spending some time going through all the stuff that's there. It'll really make things a lot clearer about what we want and how you should comport yourselves. I think to have a successful dual system, it starts by both referees showing up 30 minutes before the game, having a conversation, warming up together, talking about how you want things to go during your game. Hey, you know, I don't mind if you call something right in front of me. I might be looking at the offsides line, or hey, I really don't want you calling anything that's within 5 yards of me. All of those things are important things to talk about before you start working together. How are we going to do the restarts? You know, if there's a sub, is it going to be the person next to the ball? Is it going to always be the trail? You know, these are things you want to kind of come to an agreement with your partner before you start the game. So when you're doing the game together, you look like a team, you're consistent, it shows that you're working together and supporting each other. If you're not supporting each other in a duel, neither one of you are going to look good. It's impossible to look good if you're saying inappropriate things about your partner along the sideline, or you're shaking your head, or you have no idea what he called, or all of those things don't make you look better. They just make you both look bad. So it's very important that you work together as a team and that you support each other. And if there's a rule violation, or if there's a question about a call that's important for the game, and get together and talk about it and come to an agreement on the decision. Whoever announced the call to begin with should be the person to change the call, or say the call's not changing, and then get the game going again. But make sure you're working together as a team. That's basically the most important thing about the duel, in my opinion.
Here's a good question, and I guess this is taken in all seriousness. So it's okay for both to call fouls in the dual system? Absolutely. If you're not both calling fouls, you're not going to have a very good game.
100%.
And the dual system, there's a lot of areas where both referees are going to have difficulty judging what exactly happened because of the nature of your positioning. So you gotta work together. You gotta take some chances in order to get views. Sometimes angle is more important than distance. Sometimes having a good angle on the players is better than being, 15, 20 yards from the players. So sometimes I might run at an angle off the field onto the sideline so that I have a good angle, as opposed to running directly towards the players where the decision's happening, because I'd rather have an angle on what might take place rather than being close to what took place.
Right. And that's matches the guidance from FIFA which is now angle first, proximity second.
And if I can toss in one more little point on dead zones on the field, it's not surprising that it's a dead zone. Let's say referee one is in the south end of the field. Well, if you go clear up the touch line to the north end, that corner is kind of a dead area and may have some problems because might not be very close to that. Okay, no surprise. The other dead area that's a surprise, and if you're new to this, be aware of it, right in the middle of the field, the center circle, because something happens there and it's not very close to you. It's not very close to your partner. You think your partner's got it. Your partner thinks you have it, and there's no whistle. And you know, you only have what, half a second to blow the whistle before it's too late. So be aware of, don't be shy about calling fields right there in the calling fouls right there in the center circle.
Okay, I wanted to go back to the penalty kick, and Gil brings up a great point. The goalkeeper cheats and the ball goes into the net. So a goal's awarded. Crystal clear. Thank you, Gil. And again, it's very important that both referees in the dual system are calling what they see and working together to make sure the game goes well and is consistent.
Right. One other note, we mentioned who has the whistle on the kickoff. So if the one referee has the whistle on the kickoff, then the other one is responsible for time. It was on the slide, but I didn't mention it. That's a good point.
And I'm not sure if anybody said it tonight, but Pete Offsesser makes another strong point. Remember to make eye contact with your partner on every restart. You got to look at your partner. And you would think, oh, that's obvious, that'll happen all the time. But as an observer of games, no, it doesn't. Especially, you know, if you're new to it. Always check with your partner.
Right. And it's another good point for the pregame is understanding what experience your partner has, so that you can lend them some experience, talk about some of the basic mechanics if you need to, so that you can build them up. It's very important.
Or you can get some help from him.
Absolutely.
You're the new guy.
Okay, Dan, you can stop sharing your screen now. I want to talk a minute before we move on to Dennis about the getting money to Paula Miller. Make sure that that takes place. Also, make sure that you read the rule book and take your test online. Looking at it this week, it looked like 12 people had taken the test and passed the test. We have a long ways to go to get everybody certified. First game assignments are going to come out next week. So you want to get this stuff completed so you can be assigned those games that begin on November 16th through the 20th of November. So please don't delay on getting everything done because it's coming up real quick. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dennis. And Dennis is going to talk about the rule differences between high school and IFAB. And this is very important because we need to make sure that we're all enforcing the high school rules and not IFAB rules. Okay, Dennis, take it away, please.
Great. Hi, everybody. Glad you could make it tonight. So a couple of things I want to do to start. Over the years, a lot of the differences have been minimized, reduced. There has been a movement to make things similar. That's a blessing and a curse. If you only do high school and you haven't been following the changes in the last few years, that means you may be applying rules that once were different, no longer are different, you're applying the wrong ones. And we're not going to be talking about the places where the laws of the game and the high school rules match. But it becomes your obligation to make sure you know what the current rules are. So some of the older referees will know that, we used to do this and, but we don't do that anymore. Goal kick is not going to be something we talk about much today because there aren't any differences, but there have been some serious changes in the last 5 years in the way the game's to be called. So you may find yourself, if you only do high school, you need to go back and take a look at on the IFAB website, what has changed in the last 2 years and make sure you're in sync. And this is always the case, and is the case again now. There have been some changes in the last 2 years that high school hasn't adopted. We are going to be talking about those tonight so that you understand. And tonight we're going to be talking about what the high school rule is. So even though we're saying differences, we're not going to be talking about, well, if you were into the laws of the game, you do this, and you're in high school, you do that. We're only going to talk about what you do in high school. So let's start with kind of going backwards on the rules. So if we start at rule 17, let me get this started. There we go. We start with rule 17, corner kicks, which we had a question about tonight. There aren't any differences. It's going to be the same. Now, goal kicks, the restarts are the same, but high school has a rule that says once the keeper puts the ball down or the defender puts the ball down for the kick, she can't pick it up and run to the other side of the goal area and put it back down again. Okay, so big difference. What's the restart? Retake the goal kick. And it's okay to retake the goal kick from the right start. The important part is warning. This is viewed as a potential time wasting trick. And so high school wants you to warn. So can they do it? Absolutely, they cannot. If you see them do it, warn them, tell them they can't do it, and then retake, or in this case, take the goal kick. Throw in. There's only one significant difference for high school rules on a throw in, and that occurs when they throw the ball, but it never enters the field and touches the ground. In high school, that's a foul throw, and we're going to award a throw in to the opponent. For extra credit, where is the throw in? Is it down where the ball bounced? No, it was a foul throw. So the new throw in awarded to the opponent will be where the old throw in was. Penalty kicks. We got a couple of things that are different. What the keeper can do, that's not a difference. But we have a very different view of the restart chart. So you need to have the high school restart chart. Take it, have it with you, have a little bit. I think on the website, there's actually a chart, but we may need to update it. So we'll take a look at that. But you need to know these things because in the moment on a penalty kick, there's an infringement. You absolutely got to get it right 100% of the time what the restart is. And we'll talk about that in detail in just a few seconds. But the only other difference, general big picture on penalty kicks, is when a substitute comes in, they cannot take the penalty kick. Now, a penalty kick's not a substitution opportunity, as we'll talk about, but a lot of times what happens is on a penalty kick, somebody got a yellow card, somebody got injured, and therefore we have a substitute coming in. They cannot take the kick. Anyone else can, but the substitute who enters the game after the ball or the play is stopped for the penalty kick may not take that kick. So let's go back and talk a little bit about the restart chart. So first we're going to deal with the kicking team infringes and the ball does not go into the goal. So the first thing that could happen is ball goes over the top of the goal, just flies out of play. In that case, high school calls for a goal kick restart. So I went to take the kick. The kicking team is all jumped into the penalty area before the kick is taken, but I kick the ball over the top of the goal or past the side of the goal. but completely out of play without it touching anybody in the universe, the restart's simply going to be goal kick. Fast, it's easy, it's simple. The keeper saves and holds on to the ball. And holds on to the ball is a very important part of this. So we got everybody in the universe rushing in on the attacking team, the kicking team side before the kick's taken, but the little palunka goes right to the keeper who catches it and holds it. We're just playing on under high school rules. And one other difference, when the kicker does something stupid, like plays the ball backwards, under high school rules, we're retaking the kick. It didn't enter the goal. The kicking team infringed, but we're retaking the kick because they kicked it backwards. There's no special rule for kicking the kick backwards in high school. Now, if it's something else and the kicking team infringes and the ball does not enter the goal, we're going to give an indirect free kick to the defense, which is basically the same. So these three things when the kicking team infringes that you have to know are different. So the kicking team infringes and the ball enters the goal. Under high school rules, it's always a retake. Always. We don't care what the kicking team did to infringe. If the ball enters the goal, it's a retake. If the defending team infringes and the ball does not enter the goal, it's always a retake. No difference there. But if both teams infringe, it's always a retake. So you need to know, once again, you got these three situations when the kicking team infringes and the ball doesn't enter a goal. They're different. Got to know them. You got to know that any other time the kicking team infringes and the ball is in the back of the net because it entered the goal, we're going to retake. And you got to know that if both teams infringe, you're going to retake the kick. So under Rule 13, we got one difference in the way the rules are written and a couple of differences in terms of what is the substance. So under the laws of the game, when you're trying to figure out what fouls have a direct free kick or penalty kick, what fouls have an indirect free kick, you would look to Law 12. In high school, they're going to be listed in Rule 13. When you're writing the report as to something that happened and you're going to describe a foul, go look at Rule 13 so you get the right terminology, because there is a difference in terminology that high school uses for many things, but you're going to find it in Rule 13. And so let's scoot over to Rule 12 because we'll catch all of the other little differences inside Rule 12, which is labeled fouls of misconduct. And we're going to spend some time today about handball because over the last couple of years, we have thoroughly screwed everybody up by constantly and completely changing the rules on handball unless you do high school, because there hasn't been changes. All of the things we were learning and unlearning and then relearning and the changes of the terminology never made it to the high school book. So the first one is, what's the arm? And you're all looking at a screen that has a green portion of the arm and a red portion of the arm. For high school, they're both the arm. If the ball hits the area in green and we have deliberate movement by the player, we have a handball just the same as it hit the red area of this little cartoon. So there's no separation by the armpit. There's no separation by the shirt sleeve. There's no separation at all. Tip of the fingers to the top of the shoulder. How's this going to come up? In a lot of our games, we have to make a judgment call as to whether or not the ball that is chested beautifully by the player was actually hit using the corner of the shoulder by a not a skilled player. That's now in high school a judgment call you got to make. Because if they're using their chest It's not deliberate handling. And if they're using the outside part of their top of their arm and it's deliberate, it is a handball. And so this will happen a bunch in the games because players may not be skilled enough to always touch the ball without having a little gimme coming from the arm. But both the green and the red are the arm for high school. Fingers were, oh boy, I hate that. This is a Tom Phillips thing. Okay. That will be changed before this is ever shown again to anybody. So the second thing you need to know, the second thing you know for handball is the only thing that matters is deliberate handling of the ball. And for that concept, in my view, there really is no difference between high school and the Federation on deliberate handling of the ball, except high school hasn't confused us by changing the words every 6 seconds. You know, it's like, so the words now have been the same they've always been. You know, are we moving the arm to contact the ball? Well, that's pretty deliberate. Yeah. Is it a deliberate movement of the arm to contact the ball? That's always been deliberate. It should be deliberate. That's what you're doing. When you see an arm somewhere, why is it there? And if it's there only for the purpose of blocking some pathway either to the goal or a player who could kill them by heading the ball into the goal, the reason the arm's there is it's deliberate. So in that sense, making yourself bigger while not in the rule is instead still part of the consideration that you would do in making a judgment call. Was this deliberate handling? But you're now making a judgment call based on what you see and what the players are doing. Is it deliberate? Is it not deliberate? There is no inadvertent handball in high school. So if the ball hits my arm as an attacker and goes directly into the goal, but the referee's judgment was it was inadvertent, it was accidental. It was really good, but it was accidental. That's a good goal. The idea that we shouldn't allow goals with inadvertent handball is not part of the high school rules. So that's a goal. Now, if you got Thierry Henry doing a little hand wedgie to help the ball in, that's deliberate. But if it's inadvertent in your judgment, it isn't handball, it's not a foul, it's goal. Hold on 1 second. Thank you. Sorry about that. Now, dangerous play is one place that has traditionally had a whole set of rules for IFAB that excluded the notion that I could kick my teammate in the head and life would be good and everything would be wonderful. In high school rules, we're going to protect the person who might get their head kicked in no matter what. So dangerous play can be committed against a teammate. So we don't need to have an opponent nearby or an opponent be adversely affected. And you don't have to wait for player A to kick their own teammate in the head before you blow the whistle. But I also want to remind you, common sense. If the person on the ground is the goalkeeper and the defender is standing right next to the goalkeeper, not making any kicking movement at all, that isn't dangerous play. There is no reason to stop play and award an indirect free kick. So use your common sense. But there is no requirement that the person on the ground be an opponent or the person whose head you're going to kick because your foot is, over your shoulder is an opponent. We're going to keep it safe for high school. So one other difference, and this we actually see a lot for people who know what obstruction is, and the IFAB terminology is impeding. So you'll hear coaches saying both, and the really old coaches will be calling it obstruction because that's what it used to be called. Obstruction is movement that interferes with an opponent when the ball is not in playing position. Well, what if that interference involves contact? I bump them when I'm off the ball and the ball is nowhere near. Or I get in the way to stop their beautiful run because they're getting past me, and I slow down and bump into them. If you have a foul that is obstruction, even if there's contact, under high school, it's going to be an indirect free kick. And so in high school, it becomes really important to know the difference between what is charging, the foul of charging, and the charge of obstruction with contact, because charging will be a direct free kick, where obstruction, even if there is contact, will be an indirect free kick. Most of the time, you know it when you see it. That is, if I put my arm, my shoulder down and run you through when the ball is nowhere in playing distance, folks, that's not obstruction. That's not obstruction. When that shoulder goes down and dip and the ball is nowhere near to be found, we're going to have a direct free kick offense. Obstruction usually will be when when both people are moving and we just have the ball somewhere else. You wouldn't even have an issue with it if the ball was nearby. Then you're thinking obstruction. That what they're doing is hindering the movement. And the fact that there is contact doesn't change it so that it's always a direct free kick. Why does this matter? Penalty kick. The person who is doing this is a winger that is coming in and is going to get the pass. And I step in front of them to keep them from being able to do that and block them to hinder their pathway to the ball inside the penalty area. I got to get this one right. Is that a penalty kick or is it an indirect free kick? And the answer is all about whether it's obstruction or some other foul, but it is not simply, oh, they touched them, therefore it's always going to be a penalty kick. Make sense? It's a little more challenging, but really impeding an obstruction, you see it when the intent there is really to hinder the movement of the opponent. I've been beat. The charge is almost always, I am blocking them and knocking to the ground so I don't get beat. I'm not hindering. Well, I am hindering them, but I'm sending a message as well. But this is one of those, you have to see it. The with contact part is irrelevant to the high school judgment on obstruction or charging. And of course, my belief is if you weren't sure if it's a penalty kick and you're sitting there thinking, is it this or is it that? Probably isn't a penalty kick. You know what's a penalty kick. So that's not an excuse to, get the call wrong, but you need to know there is now a difference. And what is it that you're calling? What did you see? And what are you calling? And off the field incidents. So that we have lots of times when players are off the fields or substitutes are off the fields and they do something and it ain't right. It's going to be misconduct and it's going to be an indirect free kick under high school rules. So the changes that occurred around 5 years ago with respect to if it happened off the field, it could still be a penalty kick, does not apply in high school at all. If it's off the field, please show the card if it needs a card, but you're not going to be restarting with a penalty kick. You are going to be restarting with an indirect free kick. Now, this is actually one that high school has had, that the laws have had, that's been dropped from the laws of the game. And I don't know that anybody knows why it was dropped, but it's still in the high school rulebook. It's just like when the goalkeeper releases the ball, when can they pick it up again? And high school is very clear on this. If the ball has been touched by a teammate outside the penalty area, or the ball has been touched by an opposing player either inside or outside the penalty area, the keeper can pick up the ball. So what does this mean? Well, let's say I'm gonna make a really crappy punt on the ball as the goalkeeper. And instead of doing my normal Tony Miola, it's gonna fly 100 yards, I wish. It goes straight up in the air, and I run over and catch it inside the penalty area. Under high school rules, I can't touch the ball. I cannot catch it with my hands because it has not been touched by an opposing player, and it never left the penalty area, so it wasn't touched by a teammate outside the penalty area. Now, the fact that a goalkeeper can't touch it until it's touched by a teammate outside the penalty area doesn't change the rule that the teammate can't deliberately kick. That's still the same. But it's this rule that when the goalkeeper misplays the ball, almost always, when is it, can they touch it again? And there needs to be a touch by another player, by a teammate outside the penalty area or by opposing player, either inside or outside. As I said, where you will see this is on the missed kick by the goalkeeper. And again, when the keeper miskicks it, puts it straight in the air and goes and catches it again, it's an indirect free kick. For misconduct, the terminology is different. And when you write a match report, look, I've been instructing this. I don't write a match report without grabbing the rule book, putting it in front of me and looking at the words of the rules. Second big difference is coaches have a right to know the reason for the card. Now, if you have a way of knowing what your partner just called, give them the reason for the card. If your partner told you the reason for the card, give them for the reason for the card. And if you have no idea of the reason for the card, please, 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 please say, I'll get the reason. Don't say, hell if I know. Don't throw your partner under the bus. I didn't see anything, look good to me. None of those things, as Chip said, help you. But they're entitled to know the reason. And the rules don't say they have to have the reason in the next 6 seconds. So get it to them. Find out, get it. If something's going on, you'll get it to them at the next stoppage. If there's nothing going on, you can shout to your partner to find out. But the coaches are entitled to know. And unless you've never seen or done a high school game, this will, this won't be a surprise to you, but a reminder, any player who is cautioned, including the goalkeeper, any player who is cautioned must leave the field and they can be substituted. And in a long time of doing this, I've never seen a coach stupid enough to say, no, I'll play short for what could be the next 20 minutes till there's a substitution opportunity. But that's their option. But they can be substituted. And we'll talk about it. It's a substitution opportunity, not just for the caution player, but 2 substitutes. So you can put more people in. But that caution player must leave. And I say again, even if that's the goalkeeper, there's no special goalkeepers get 1 free yellow card without having to leave. And that's a running theme tonight. Goalkeepers are, for the most part, just another player in high school rules. So 2 things I want to mention about terminology is unsporting conduct, because I want you to be aware the language is different. So when the coach says, what was it for? And you say unsporting behavior, the coach may understand what you're saying, but you're not saying it correctly. And if you're the expert under the high school rules, which the coach certainly isn't, please use the right terminology. Where it becomes really important is if you write, I gave a red card, I showed a red card and disqualified a player for denying an obvious goal scoring opportunity. If you look at the rule book, that ain't a ground for a red card. That ain't a ground for disqualification. Wait a minute, you say, of course there is. And the answer is the terminology. The disqualification is for serious foul play. What's one of the ways you can commit serious foul play? Denying an obvious goal scoring opportunity. When you show the red card, you show the red card. But when you write the report, you got to get it right. You got to get it right every time. So one of the few differences on a caution, I mean, what you're going to give a yellow card doesn't change dramatically between the various things that we do. But if I interrupt an advantageous attack, and a penalty kick's awarded, and there's an attempt to play the ball, I'm still showing the yellow card. There's no excuse on a yellow card for interrupting an advantageous attack. Even if you give an advantage, even if you give a penalty kick, even if there was an attempt to play the ball, that yellow card for interrupting an advantageous attack remains. So when we shift over to the red card things, there's no difference. So you got a penalty kick and you had a challenge on the ball, an attempt to play the ball. We're not showing the red card. That's the same. We're going to show the yellow card because there was a penalty kick for dog show. This is different. This is, I would give a caution for an unsporting conduct for interrupting an advantageous attack. That yellow card goes even if I give the advantage. That yellow card goes even if, they score, even if there's the interrupting an advantageous attack, we'll still go back and give the yellow card. And as I said in the beginning, if you haven't been following what IFAB has been doing in the last 3 years, you'd say, why are we even talking about that? Because there have been some changes, but not in high school. This is the next two things, though, are very serious, very important, and very different. So we had a fight. And so we had two players. We got two players, and they're doing the rumble. They're about to do a fight, and they're going to get a red card, and they're going to be disqualified. Okay, that doesn't change. Now what happens when the bench gets involved? Special rule. If we've got one or two substitutes or bench personnel who leave the team area to enter the field, so fights over there. I got someone on the bench. They want to participate in the fight. They leave the team area. They enter the field where the fight's taking place. Each of them will be disqualified, one or two, and the slide doesn't say it, but one or two on the same team. Okay, one or two leaving the bench area to go in, and they go in to participate in the fight. They're each just going to be disqualified. Now, the coach who steps onto the field to grab his player and pull the player away and out of the fight isn't entering the field to help take place in the fight. We don't have to dismiss the coach for doing us a favor and getting control of their players. But you got one or two substitutes or bench personnel. Bench personnel in this case may be, the angry assistant coach who, a year ago was a player on the team. They want to participate in the fight. One or two of them, they're each going to be disqualified. One or two. But if three or more on the same team do it, we're ending the match. We're terminating the match. So how do we know what's a brawl for high school rules? We got three of them. Three people who are substitutes or bench personnel on the same team, leave it to enter the field where the fight's taking place. We are terminating the match. So who wins? Who loses? Not my job. If I knew the answer, I wouldn't tell you. If you knew the answer, don't tell the coaches or spectators or the players. Legal decide. But the match is terminated. We will not restart it. Three or more from the same team leave the team area to enter the field to join a fight. So one or two, red card, three or more, terminate the match. Part of that is because once pandemonium takes place, It has been my experience that when 3 or more have entered, now the fans will be there and all of the other teams will be there. It will be a massive brawl. So part of our approach in terms of managing matches is if you can keep the 1 or 2 off the field, if you can keep the 1 or 2 off the field, it won't escalate. And once the 3rd is on the field, the match is going to terminate. You're not going to be able to put it back in, practically, more importantly, by rule. Rule 11, offside. One of the most complicated rules we got. Oh, let me take a second. And have there been any chat questions or things that I should go back and talk about?
Looks pretty clean, Dennis.
No, not
Great.
yet.
All right. Well, that's because I haven't gotten to the really good stuff.
You're
Shin
clear
guards.
as
Shin
coffee.
guards. Everybody's got questions about shin guards. Which is why I'm doing it in this reverse order, because I'm bored with questions about shin guards every year. So rule 11 offside, really complicated rule. It's still complicated, but there aren't any differences to make it more confusing. If you get it wrong, you're going to get it wrong in every set of rules known to mankind. And if you get it right, equally, you'll be brilliant in every set of rules known to mankind. Kicks from the penalty mark, big difference. And we got to begin that even in the high school era, there isn't one rule. There will be one rule when we get the CIF playoffs, and we will teach it. But when you get to tournament season, you're going to get some differences. And so you're going to have to know the rules of the tournament you're doing to make sure you know if you get to quarterfinals or semifinals or finals, what are the rules if the match is tied at the end of regulation play. But in general, some of the big differences. One, we have overtime, and we usually have 1 overtime period, not 2. And it's almost always sudden death. So as soon as somebody scores, it's over. We get to go home. But you have to check the rules of competition, because that's not required. And in virtually every game that you will do for high school, the recommendations of the federation will be followed. And they have very different processes for who can take the kick and what's the process that we're going to use for taking the kick. Although the kick itself is basically the same. So let's talk about process. 1, when the game is over, we don't care how many players were on the field, who was a substitute, who was eligible or not. We care about who was disqualified and shown a red card. But otherwise, we're not going to worry about reducing the number, because any player on the roster, so anyone who is listed as a player on the roster or as a substitute on the roster who didn't get a red card, they may kick. They don't have to be on the field at the end. It's always a good idea in high school to remind people they don't have to be on the field, because people are used to the other one, and that this will cause trouble if they don't know that you're doing it right and everybody's doing it right, because anyone on the roster who's not shown a red card, who's not disqualified, may kick. And guess what? They can add people to the roster. So it didn't have to be someone on the roster at the start of the game. So we're going to designate 10 kickers from the roster, not 11, 10. And they're going to head off into the center circle. The referee is going to decide which goal we're going to use to take care of the kicks. So we have a coin toss. That's the same, but we're only going to have 1 to see who chooses first or second. So we're going to have 5 kicks. That's not different. But as soon as the 5 kicks are over, we're going to have 5 different people take the kick. And they could change their mind as to who it is, but it just can't be one of the people who just took a kick. After the 10th player kicks, a kicker may kick a second time. And since our association was the one that had, I think, the most penalty kicks ever taken in the history of mankind, over 2 days with 2 different referee crews, this notion continues. So a kicker may kick a 3rd time after the 20th player kicks, and a 4th time after the 30th player kicks. But not all of it. Not everybody has to take a kick. After 10, you start over and you could use the first 5, or you could use a different group. You don't have to keep the same groupings. And so we continue on after 5. If we have someone who scored more than the other, they win. And if not, it's 1 and 1 and 1, just like under the laws of the game. But the big difference is, when can someone take a second kick? So it is still critical that we write down the number of the player who took the kick, so we know the order of the first 10 people, and make sure that no one is kicked a second time during the first 10 kicks. Rule 9, which we never read because there are no differences as to the ball in or out of play. Couple minor differences on a drop ball. And one, by the way, I don't think is intuitive. And I think we have seen people not know this and mess up not last year, but the year before. So inside the penalty area, the goalkeeper, all opponents must be outside the penalty area. So it's not just they have to be 4 yards away, but 4 yards and outside the penalty area. That's a smart rule difference, in my opinion. All other players must be 4 yards away. So under high school rules, if you're dropping it to the goalkeeper and the defender is standing right next to the goalkeeper, by rule that teammate needs to be 4 yards away. Now you can decide whether you see that person right next to the goalkeeper and want him to move 4 yards away, or say, the goalkeeper's going to pick it up. It's not going to make a difference. Trifling is still trifling, but by rule, the idea is everybody is 4 yards away from the goalkeeper and everybody is outside the penalty area. That becomes most significant as you're dropping it right at the edge of the penalty area. You want them 4 yards away plus outside. That makes sense. It's easy. If you're outside the penalty area and you're near the touch line when you're dropping the ball, step in 5 yards from the touch line. That's the one I don't think people have really been cognizant of. You know, we just do a drop ball outside, it's over there. You need to be 5 yards from the touch line. I think the reason for that was that they thought that you'd be dropping it and then you'd be kicking the AR, or you'd be dropping it, be rolling out. It's embarrassing because you have to do it over again. I've never seen either of those two things, but just be 5 yards away. And of course, your advice when you're doing a drop ball, 5 yards from the touch line, stand where you can see the players instead of see the audience. Because like, make sure you aim yourself in a way you can see what happens next. Duration of the match, significant difference under high school rules to the laws of game and how we even think about time. For high school games, think more like this is basketball. What do I mean by that? We got a clock. It's running. It stops. It starts. It gets to 0. Game is over. We aren't adding time. We aren't saying, okay, well, you know, we had a caution there and an injury there. I think I'll add 2 minutes. No. We're doing exact amounts of time. And we are told by rule the times we stop the clock. We are told by rule the times we start the clock, and we are given discretion by rule to stop the clock at other times. But time is a fixed notion in high school. And so when the clock is running, it is running, and you can't add more time to it. You can stop it, but you can't add more time to it. Our halves are 40 minutes long. JV2. The referee stops and starts the clock. Okay, well, no one is there's no big scoreboard in most of the games we do. There is certainly not a score table. So the referee is still the only person who really knows when the clock stopped, when the clock started. So we have signals for that. We'll talk about that in a second. And as I said, we don't add time. So what are we stopping for? Goals. Anytime a goal is scored, we're gonna stop the clock. On the kickoff, we will start the clock. Injuries. So Johnny went down. We're not sure if they're injured. We go over to see them. We don't have to stop the clock. Johnny goes down. We need to get some attention to this boy. We're going to stop the clock for that injury. And there is a concomitant rule in high school that when you stop the clock, you've judged that the injury is serious enough that he needs to be seen by the coach or the trainer, and he's going to have to remove the field. So stopping the clock is significant for an injury, not just because of the time, but because of the impact on whether that player has to leave. We'll talk more about that in a minute. If we have a card, a red card or a yellow card, we're going to stop the clock. On a penalty kick, we're going to stop the clock. So there is a minute left in the game, and a penalty kick is awarded. The second that that kick is taken, there's still a minute left in the game, and we're counting down from the minute. So we're not just simply adding enough time to complete the kick. We're simply stopping the clock, and once the kick is taken, we'll use the rest of the time. If the result of that penalty kick is the ball is in the back of the net and it's a good goal, we're going to stop the clock again. Okay, maybe that kick took 2 seconds from the time they kicked it to the ball went into the back of the net, because really slow kick, kind of the kick I would make. On the kickoff, we got 58 seconds left to go. Time is fixed. Time is specific. Don't deny the players the time. When the leading team substitutes in the last 5 minutes of the second half, we are stopping the clock. So if the leading team and the losing team both substitute, we're stopping the clock in the last 5 minutes of the second half because the leading team is substituting. Doesn't matter who asked first. Whenever the leading team substitutes in the last 5 minutes, that means in the 85th minute. Now, folks, the coach doesn't know that you're in the last 5 minutes. So let them know. We're in the last 5 minutes. Easy breezy. You can do it when there's a stoppage. You can do it when they're not substituting. We're in the last 5 minutes. But because the clock has been stopped and started, they know what running time is, but they don't know what your time is. So let them know. Are you required to? No, but trust me on this one. Letting them know that they're in the last 5 minutes and therefore the clock stops will help you. Now, that's when you must. And then any other reason, you got something going on. You got a dog on the field. You got this, you got that, you got this. Weird things happen. You can stop the clock for any other reason. Now, you notice we didn't stop the clock because they were wasting time on 6 seconds for the goalkeeper to release the ball, or playing games with the, I'm going to do a throw in and then I put the ball down and then the other person picks the ball up and he puts it down. The way you stop the clock for those sorts of things of time wasting is you blow your whistle and you stop the clock and say, knock it off. Or if they've done it enough that they're going to get a yellow card for delaying the restart of the play, blow the whistle, stop the clock, give a yellow card. Now you've stopped the clock for a card. But you can't just simply say, I don't like it, so I'm going to add some time. But you can't stop the clock for any reason that is appropriate in the game. You're given discretion in the hopes that you'll use it wisely. So the signal on your screen is the signal we use to stop the clock. This is a very good way to stop time wasting. When a goal is scored and somebody is ahead by 1 late in the game, and there's going to be this mad scramble to grab the ball and get the restarted, it's useful to tell the players in high school, the clock is stopped on a goal. The clock is stopped, and use the signal. It helps them calm down if they trust you. What do I mean by that? Hey, if you had a half and you had 2 goals and a caution, and you blow the whistle at 40 minutes, you cheated them. It's not possible for a half that has 2 goals and a caution to be exactly 40 minutes. So now here's the danger with time. When you actually physically stop your clock, you're at risk of what happens if you screw up in restarting your clock. And so there are ways that people deal with that. One, the really smart people like Chip can look at their watch and say, okay, it took 72 seconds for that caution to restart. So I know at the end I'll add 72 seconds. Or if you're a dumb guy like me, you have 2 watches. One you start and stop, and one you never stop, because if you screw up, then you got to do your best. And then you admit you screwed up on the time, but at least you have a rough sense on the other watch of where you need to be and what you need to add. But particularly people who are doing high school, then varsity games, practice on high school, stopping the clock and starting the clock. And again, my suggestion is, if you're going to do that, have 2 watches. So am I going to be able to walk over and whack you over the head with a ruler like, Sister Dennis? If you did instead, there were 2 goals and a caution, so I'm going to assume that took 1:30. No, Sister Dennis won't come and beat you. But if a goal score is not scored, we don't want the players to cheat, but we don't want the referees to cheat. So high school rules are specific about time for a reason. And there's actually discussions at every level of soccer to try and give back players the time that they've lost by stopping the clock. So that's the future. High school's there now. So let's try and give them exactly the time the rules give them. Now, there's another converse to this that works the other way as well. And sometimes you just have to have the courage. If you're starting the clock and stopping the clock, and the team is down by 1, and they got a corner kick, and the corner kick's not a basis to stop the clock, and the other team's not doing anything to screw around, and there's no caution or anything, and the clock ticks, gets to 0, and you blow your whistle, the game is over. No requirement the ball be in play. The game is over. But again, do yourself a favor. You're not required to say, there is 14 seconds left, but when there's less than a minute left and you have that situation, let them know we're under a minute. Hurry up, we're under a minute. But you have no obligation. In fact, the high school rules would say, I know it's a corner kick, I know it's close, I'm just gonna, fudge and give them an extra 20 seconds. That's not the high school way. The high school way is when the clock is stopped, the game is over. So you can manage the situation. It also means take care of business when they're wasting time with 15 minutes to go. Don't just focus on wasting time in the last minute, because they may not be. Give the teams the time that high school entitles them to, which is 40 minutes plus the clock stop for those 5 things, plus anything that in your discretion is appropriate to stop the clock. Halftime is 10 minutes. Very rarely the opposing coaches agree to change the halftime, and then they come and tell you, and we don't get to say no. If the coaches say we're going to do 5-minute half, they can. But almost all of them want the full 10 minutes. And in fact, the real problem is some of them have such important things to say to their teams that it can't possibly be done in less than 11 minutes. So keep the games going. No big assistant referee, no significant differences in Southern California, meaning we don't have, timekeepers and all the other things that the high school rules provide for. You won't see that. You'll have your 3 referees and sometimes an additional assistant or 4th official. So we've talked about the dual system. It's allowed, it's not mandated. And the diagonal system, which is allowed, it's not mandated. And high school views itself as an education in the classroom. So they want to have a pregame conference. They want it to be with the captains and coach. By our last session, we'll give you the latest version of whatever COVID protocols are. So for now, anticipate that we're going to have one captain, one coach. And at every one of those pregame conferences, you're going to look at the coach and say the player is properly equipped and ready to play. And at every one of those, and you're going to yes. And at every one of those conferences, you're going to mention that under high school rules and CIF, good sportsmanship is an important part of this game. And what you say and how you say isn't a card that you have to read and is mandated, but it's really easy to slough it off. We don't like it. Coaches don't like it. CIF and high school want it. Sportsmanship matters. And we have lots of red cards and we have lots of problems. And we're going to begin by setting the right tone. And so even though Sister Dennis won't come and whack you with a ruler, if you're not to the millisecond correct in your timekeeping, Sister Dennis will come and whack you if you aren't mentioning sportsmanship before every game. And if COVID protocols change that we don't want to go near players or coaches, we'll let you know. But it is important, and it is something that we got to get out of the habit of saying, why do I have to do that? I don't want to do that.
Okay, Dennis, I think you've frozen up or something because your video's gone. Let's see. Maybe I can take over for Dennis. Training. Differences. Dennis, you might drop off and then rejoin again. Let me get to where he is in his presentation. He's almost done. Okay, so the CIF rules require that you have your rule book. All officials for our section shall be at the game in 30 minutes. As long as we're talking about in uniform, we'd like all the uniforms to be the same. It's been a while since US Soccer has changed their uniforms, so everyone really should have new uniforms and be wearing them with the two-striped socks. Let me see if I can share my screen. Give me a second here. Share screen. Share. Huh, look at that. Okay. So injured players. So if you're in your opinion, in the opinion of the referee, I tutor, a player is injured, we're going to stop the clock. Okay. And the player will be removed. Or if the player is treated on the field, we'll stop the clock and the player is removed. Okay. So in high school, it doesn't matter who's injured, how many people are injured, what position the player is playing when they're injured. They all will leave the field without exception, even goalkeepers. So if the goalkeeper's injured and he needs treatment on the field, or you stop the clock because the goalkeeper's injured and he can't continue play right away, he's going to leave the field. Remember that the players can be substituted for, so a new goalkeeper can come in, new attackers, new defenders can come in if they're injured. Okay. Whenever a play is stopped for other reasons, including an injury, the restart is an indirect free kick to the team in possession of the ball when play was stopped. So we need to be very careful about stopping the play for an injury, because you're going to give an indirect free kick. But there are some things where we have no choice. We need to stop. And one of those is a suspected head injury. Notice I didn't say concussion. I said suspected head injury. We are not doctors. We don't know when somebody has a concussion, but we might suspect that they have a head injury. When that happens, we're going to stop right away. I don't care where the ball is. But in general, think about where you stop play, because if you stop play when no one has possession of the ball, it can be a drop ball, which might be easier than giving the attacking team an indirect free kick at the top of the penalty box. So be smart. If the injury reduces teams to less than 7 players, we need to wait until they get back to 7 players to restart the game. Okay. Referee's jurisdiction begins when the referee enters the field or the surroundings and at least 15 minutes prior to the start of the game. Okay. So when we arrive at the field, we're still in charge and we still enforce the rules. And when we leave the field and its immediate surroundings, that's when our jurisdiction ends as well. Okay. So when you show up 30 minutes before the game and there's a problem, you can take care of it because you're there, or you can wait 15 minutes prior to the start of the game and then take care of it. But when you're there, you're in charge. Okay. Okay, players' equipment. Home team wears dark colored jerseys and socks, and the visit team wears white jerseys and socks. Notice here that it doesn't talk about anything about shorts. So the color of the shorts don't matter. If the home team is wearing their dark colored shirts and black shorts and dark socks, that's good. If they're wearing their dark jerseys and white shorts and dark socks, that's okay too. The visiting team's uniforms need to be all white, okay? Again, the shorts don't matter, okay? Keepers' jerseys must be different than field players, obviously. They don't necessarily need to be different from the referee, but it's a good idea to change if possible. The socks of the goalkeepers need to be different from the opposing field players. They can be the same as their own team, but they have to be different than the opposing team. So the home team goalkeeper is not going to be wearing white socks. Okay. For high school, enforce the uniform code for the varsity teams. When they're illegally uniformed, send me an email saying what the situation was. That's the report required, an email to me. If it's JV and freshman teams, don't worry about it. Just hopefully a game happens, it takes place, it's safe, and no one gets hurt. Okay, the undershorts, the undershirts, all the players on one team must wear the same color if they're going to be wearing undershorts or undershirts. So if the home team is wearing dark colors and they all have white compression pants underneath their shorts, that's okay. They don't have to match, okay? But they do all have to be the same as their team. One team member can't wear blue compression shorts and another team member wear white compression shorts. That's not allowed. Shin guards, they need to be size appropriate and not altered. And technically they have to have the Noxay seal. Ask the coach. Ask the coach to make sure the shin guards are correct if you have a problem with someone's shin guards. Protective face mask requires a medical release signed by a physician, must be available at the field. My suggestion, don't go ask to see the medical release signed by the physician. Ask the coach, do you guys have a medical release for the face mask? The coach will say yes, in which case you're good to go. If he says no, then you inform them of the rule that it's not allowed without a medical release. That's the simplest way to handle this issue. Medical medals and bracelets taped to the body with the medical data visible. Religious medals taped to the body under their shirt. By rule, religious medals are not jewelry. Try and make sure things are safe as much as possible.
Chip, you got a question about cut socks? If they have cut socks that show a different color underneath?
If the socks become cut through play,
No, it's
Or-
like, you know, players like to cut their socks.
okay. If the socks are not appropriate and they're not all the same as everyone else, then it should be fixed. Have them get new socks. If they're wearing ankle braces, they can be any color, don't have to match. Casts. Casts in high school need to be covered by a foam padding. This is not bubble wrap. It's a 1/2 inch thick. It's completely covering the cast. And as long as they're not using their foam padded casts in a way that's dangerous, let them play. If the player shows up with this thick bubble wrap, that's not allowed and they should not play. Please take care of this before the game starts, not during the game. This is one thing that's clearly spelled out in the rule book on what needs to happen if you're going to wear a cast. Players illegally equipped. The first offense by a team. Player is removed at the next stoppage and may be replaced. The coach is cautioned. The head coach is cautioned for the first offense of an illegally equipped player. Not an improperly equipped player, but an illegally equipped player. This is why in the pregame it's important to ask the coach, both coaches together, are your players properly equipped? The player may return at the next substitution opportunity. Okay. The second offense by a team, the player is cautioned. So at the next stoppage, he's removed, he's cautioned, and he may return at the next substitution opportunity, and he may be replaced. Okay, players and substitutes. Unlimited substitutions by either team. Remember that they need to be beckoned onto the field by the referee before they can enter. I want to warn you about beckoning substitutes onto the field. In high school soccer, when you beckon a substitute onto the field, at that time, they are the player, and the person they're replacing, if they're on the field, is now the substitute. Be smart when you beckon someone onto the field. Substitutions can happen on a goal kick, if there's blood or a suspected head injury, a caution, a disqualification. Now in high school, they don't call it a send-off or an ejection. They actually call it a disqualification. Unlimited substitutions by either team after beckoned by the referee on a kickoff, injury, and the player leaves the field. Okay, and by a team in possession on a throw-in, their own throw-in, or their own corner kick. If one team is substituting on their own throw-in and their own corner kick, the other team may make an unlimited number of substitutions as well. Okay. Thing to be aware of, penalty kicks, it's not a substitution opportunity. Okay. If there's an injury or a card issued, then a penalty kick becomes a substitution opportunity. If the attacking team is making a substitute on a penalty kick because of an injury or a card, the substitute that just entered may not take the penalty kick. Goalkeeper may change places with a field player whenever the clock is stopped or either team substitutes, and the referee shall be notified. Warn on the first offense. If a team, in your opinion, is substituting to waste time, warn the coach and stop the clock. Okay? If it's continuing to happen, please caution coach for unsporting conduct. In high school, we have unsporting conduct, not unsporting behavior. The ball, there's no real differences. They should have the National Federation of High School seal on it, but have a decent ball to play with and have 3. The field of play. If bleachers or a stadium is present, make sure all spectators are in them. No one should be on the field. Anyone in the bench area should be on the roster. Make sure if there's extra people in the technical area that they're on the roster in case you have problems later on in the game. Don't allow people behind the goals unless they're in the bleachers or the stands. Again, if there's no bleachers, spectators should be at least 10 feet from the touchline. The goal. In high school, the goals are sometimes there with football goalposts, and the goalposts need to be at least 2 yards from the goal line. Goals need to be anchored. If they're not anchored, there is no game. Okay. Before the game starts, the home team decides whether the field is playable. Okay. So if the field's wet or it's rainy, up until start time, home team decides whether they're going to play or not. After the game begins, referee decides whether it is safe to continue playing. So if the home team says the field that's under 2 inches of water, that, hey, my field's good and playable, you as the referee set up to start the game, blow your whistle to start. When they kick the ball in the puddle and it doesn't really move very much, then you decide the game's unsafe and you terminate the game and go home. Grace period. The home team can decide, okay, by CIF regulation, to delay the start of the game. The delay can be no longer than 30 minutes. Okay. I know there were some questions. Let's go back through the chat and see if we can find them. Again, cutout socks. If there's colors showing through and they're no longer a solid color, then they should change the socks.
There was one point made about junior varsity or freshman games in some parts of the county being 35-minute halves instead
So
of.
last season, the North County Conference JV teams and freshman teams played 35-minute halves. I have not heard anything about that this season. I don't think Arnold's on the call today, so we'll have to wait and hear about that later. So the third meeting on November 3rd, we'll talk about if there's any COVID guidelines, if there's any special issues with halves for the North County Conference, but we'll deal with that later. When we're stopping the clock in the last 5 minutes of the second half because a team is leading the game, it doesn't matter how much the team is leading, as long as the score is not tied. When the leading team is involved in a substitution in the last 5 minutes, the clock will stop. Now, if the leading team is substituting at 74:50, the clock doesn't stop, even though it continues to run past the 75th minute. If the team substitutes after the 75th minute and they're leading, then we're going to stop the clock. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that time expires on your watch and the ball goes out for a corner kick, or the ball's already out for a corner kick and the clock expires. The corner kick does not take place. The half ends. Okay. When we're talking about time, it's very important that we only play the legal amount of time as determined by the rules. If you allow the corner kick to take place after time's expired and they score a goal, you've basically cheated the team.
Chip, there's a question about the uniform infractions and how tightly they need to be enforced.
So enforcing uniform infractions is dependent on what type of uniform infraction it is. If the visiting team is not wearing a solid white jersey and solid white socks, the game still happens, but the uniform issue gets reported to me in an email, and then I forward that on to CIF for them to take care of. If the team is wearing undershirts, okay, and they don't all match, then a few of them are not going to be able to wear undershirts because that's something that needs to be enforced. If you're playing a team and they all have different long sleeves underneath their jerseys, that could cause some confusion to the opponent. And that's why they want them all to be the same. Shin guards are important. It's a safety issue. If somebody's not wearing the appropriate shin guards, we need to get them out of the game and have them find appropriate shin guards. Again, if you're not wearing the proper socks, you don't play. Someone was asking. It's very easy for the varsity teams to have the right uniforms, the right socks, and they should comply to that. Okay, again, before we wrap up here, I want to make sure that everyone's typed in their name in the chat, so you get credit for being at the meeting. Our next meeting is going to be November 3rd at 6:30 via Zoom. That meeting we'll talk about how we can be more consistent on the field and be the same as we're officiating the games. Again, for uniform enforcement, you get what you accept. If you allow people to play with improper uniforms, the officiating crew that comes behind you is going to have problems as well. So please take care of if they're cutting out socks, whether it's JV or freshman teams. Please enforce the rules. What you do is you tell the player with a cutout sock, you need to have the appropriate solid color socks, and you don't let them play. Okay, and then the next game, they'll show up with the correct socks, right? And even for your game, they'll go find the right socks. They can share socks. They can get socks from somebody who's injured, sitting on the bench and not playing, whatever it is. But take care of these issues in the beginning of the season, and then nobody will have these problems during the season, especially at the tournaments. That's a great place to start letting people know what we expect.
And then we had a question about the slide decks. Are we going to post them or links to them on the SCSOA site?
We don't usually post the slide decks. This meeting is being recorded, so it is available to watch again as soon as we get it up on the website. If you missed the first training meeting, you can go to the website and view that there. All the policies and procedures are on the website, and all of the ways to pay your dues or mail your check in is on the website. And again, the link to the exam is on the website as well, SCSOASD.com. With that, thank you for your attendance, and have a great evening.